What if a resume with 5 jobs in 8 years isn't a warning sign, but actually a competitive advantage? That's the surprising argument behind a new article in Harvard Business Review called The Case for Hiring Job Hoppers. And if you're a manager who has ever looked at a resume and thought, they've changed jobs way too many times, this one is worth about 6 minutes of your attention. Well, welcome back to the Manager Lab. Today, I want to talk about a hiring assumption that many of us probably make without even realizing it. We see someone who has moved from company to company every couple of years, and we think, are they loyal? Will they stay? Are they going to leave us as soon as something better comes along? And frankly, that's not an unreasonable concern. But new research highlighted in Harvard Business Review suggests that we may be looking at the resume completely wrong. Researchers Rebecca Kehoe of Cornell and F. Scott Bentley of Rutgers studied the employment histories and performance of 8,693 U.S. hedge fund managers who moved among 2,130 firms between 2004 and 2019. This comes from the Academy of Management Journals. And what they found is very fascinating. People who changed organizations more frequently actually tended to adapt faster when they entered a new organization. In other words, the very thing we might interpret as a weakness, like moving around, may have helped them develop a skill that organizations desperately need: the ability to figure out things quickly in a new environment. So here's the part I think every manager should pay attention to. Changing organizations creates a performance dip. That makes sense. You don't know the people, you don't know the culture, you don't know how decisions really get made, you don't know who has the influence, you don't know which rules are written down and which rules everybody just knows. The research suggests that people with more experience moving between organizations become better at navigating exactly those things. And HBR reports a particular interesting finding. Managers who have made 4 or more previous moves return to their baseline performance in roughly 2 months, compared with about 5 months for managers who have moved less frequently. Think about what that means. We often say this person has changed jobs 4 or 5 times, and that's risky. But put another way, this person has had 4 or 5 opportunities to learn how to walk into an unfamiliar organization, figure out how things work, build relationships, and become productive. And that's a very different interpretation. So takeaway number 1 is to stop equating mobility with disloyalty. So here's the first takeaway for managers. Don't automatically confuse career mobility with poor commitment. Now, I'm not saying that you should ignore a candidate's employment history. If somebody has had 6 jobs in 6 years and can't explain why, that's worth exploring. But don't make the resume the conclusion. Make it the beginning of the conversation. So ask them things like, walk me through your career moves. What were you trying to accomplish with each move? What did you learn from one organization that helped you in the next? And here's the question I really like. What's something you learned about the organizations from your previous moves that you would do differently if you joined us? Now you're not just evaluating whether someone has moved, you're evaluating whether they've learned from moving. And that's a much better hiring conversation. Takeaway number 2 is hire for adaptability. This second takeaway is even more important. Adaptability may be the underappreciated hiring competency. Think about the environment we're managing in today. AI is changing jobs. Organizations are restructuring. Teams are constantly being reorganized. People are working across functions where strategies are changing, customers are changing, and technology changes every day. And managers routinely ask employees to learn something new and adjust. So if adaptability is increasingly valuable, why wouldn't we look for evidence that someone has actually demonstrated it? A candidate who has successfully entered multiple organizations has potentially had a lot of practice at exactly that. They've learned to use new systems, new expectations, new personalities, new cultures, new ways of making decisions, and they've had to do it repeatedly. That's not necessarily a liability. It may be relevant experience. Takeaway number 3, change your interview questions. Here's the practical part. If you're interviewing someone with a history of job changes, don't spend the entire interview asking, why did you leave? Instead, spend some time asking, how did you adapt? So things like, what did you notice when you first joined a new organization? How did you figure out who the key people were? How did you learn the unwritten rules? Tell me about a time when you initially misunderstood the culture, and what did you do differently as a result of that? What did you do when you realized you were wrong? How quickly were you able to become productive? Those types of questions get you underneath the resume, because the real issue isn't how many times you have moved. The real issue is, what did all of those moves teach you? Key takeaway number 4, don't onboard everyone the same way. And this is a very important implication for managers, because if someone has extensive experience moving between organizations, don't assume they need less onboarding. They may just need different onboarding. The research suggests that the advantage of experienced movers comes partly from their ability to quickly understand organizational norms, relationships, and expectations. So instead of spending all your onboarding time explaining the employee handbook, help new employees understand how your organization actually works, who makes the decisions, how information flows, where does collaboration happen, how are disagreements handled, what gets rewarded, who are the informal influencers, what does good really look like around here. These are the things that aren't always in the employee handbook, but they can make an enormous difference in how quickly someone becomes effective. And I think there's a bigger lesson here. We often use shortcuts when we hire, like college degree, check. Years of experience, check. Stable employment history, check. No gaps, check. Sometimes those shortcuts cause us to eliminate people before we've really understood what they bring to the table. The lesson from this research isn't hire every job hopper. It's much more nuanced than that. It's don't reject someone simply because their career doesn't look like the career you expected. Instead, ask them what their career has taught them so far. Because in a rapidly changing workplace, the ability to enter a new environment, understand it, build relationships, and become productive quickly may be one of the most valuable capabilities a person can bring to your team. So here's what I challenge you to do this week. If you're involved in hiring, take one resume that you might normally label as a job hopper, and don't judge it. Study it. And then ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, what evidence is there that this person can adapt? Number 2, what did they learn from each move? And 3, does their experience moving between organizations actually make them better prepared for us in the environment that we're hiring them into? And if you're interviewing them, ask, what have you learned about adapting to new organizations that would help you succeed here? And that one question might tell you more than the number of companies listed on the resume. So, next time you see a resume with a lot of movement, don't automatically think job hopper, maybe think experienced adapter, because the question isn't simply whether somebody has moved around. The question is whether they've gotten better at landing, learning, connecting, and performing. And according to this new research, there may be a lot more value in that experience than we previously thought. Well, I'm Greg Gillum, and until next time we meet in the Manager Lab, do good work.